Okay, we will get started. The reason I leave a couple of minutes at the start of the session for other people to join is because I share stuff in the chat, and if people join later on, they can't access the stuff in the chat, and I have to repost it, which wastes time later on. So thank you all for coming um, to this session. Today we're going to be looking at Microsoft Excel. Um, And it's important to remember that Excel is a hugely powerful piece of software, um, and it can be quite overwhelming. We haven't got enough time to go through every single feature, so I'm going to try and run through some stuff that you're perhaps not as familiar with. I am assuming that you know the very basics, about formatting, that you have to put numbers into the cells. It's about creating tables and working with data. Um, but I found in
I don't know anything, but I just know how to use it.
I was going to say in my last session, I said this at the start, and people looked at me absolutely petrified.
Yeah,
So, so
um,
don't
I
worry.
think everyone is just assumed to know
Yeah.
Excel, and then you kind of find I don't even know how to open, because I've been trying to change my Excel sheets that I already have. I don't even know how to start.
It is very intimidating, and I won't lie to you. I am far from an expert. I'm a creative. I'm not a data person, a numbers person at all. So when I need to use Excel, I've got Google open. I'm like, how do I do this? How do I do that? So if there is anything that you're not sure about, and I'm not sure either, we will do a bit of research together to find the answers to the queries that we might have, because that's an important skill to have all on its own. And it is a skill. The amount of people who don't know how to Google effectively and efficiently is quite remarkable. So just a few housekeeping things as well before we start. I've got three monitors on the go here. So I've got my laptop over here, I've got Excel open over here, and I've got another monitor over here. So if I'm looking over here, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's just because I've got loads of monitors. And it would also be good if you could keep your mics muted, but feel free to just, shout out questions, put hands up as we go. It's just sometimes background noise can come through and it's a bit distracting. So let's have a look at some learning objectives. You can all see my screen, yes? Yes?
Yes.
Cool. Um, so learning objectives. Today, just admit somebody here. So today's learning objectives are to gain a knowledge of and confidence using Microsoft Excel tools and functionality, to be aware of the differences between desktop versions and 365 or web versions of Excel, and also to be able to use search engines and AI tools to find additional guidance if we need it. So we'll start by going through a little bit of jargon, just to kind of um, set the scene, I suppose, because these are things that people talk about interchangeably, but there is actually distinction. So I'll be using the term workbook, and that refers to an Excel file. Sometimes they're called spreadsheets, but the correct term is actually workbook. A worksheet is one page within a workbook. You can see down here, these are different worksheets that we have open, okay? A formula is a mathematical operation that you do in Excel. So if you're adding numbers together, if you're saying this cell plus this cell equals something, that is a formula. And a function is a predefined formula in Excel. So if I come up here and I press equals and I start to type in a word, these are all functions that appear. And these are just basically shortcuts to formulas, rather than me having to do some custom programming or to go through and add lots of cells together manually. I can use a function. So a good example is sum. Yeah, so I can use sum, select a range of cells to find the total,
And
rather
all
than
you have to
going
do is
through.
add the equal sign.
Yes, all you have to do is add the equal sign. But we'll come on to that a little bit later on. First of all, I'd like to just go through, because we've got multiple people today, which is nice. I've just got some WooClap questions. If I just open up my other browser and drag that in. I'll also say that today's my first day back after some leave, so I'm a little bit, I've forgotten how everything works. So if you scan this QR code, I will also pop the link into the chat. And this is just to gauge, gonna let me pop a link in. You'll have to copy and paste this. I don't know why it never copies it in as a link. And we'll just go through a few questions, just so I can measure how you feel before the session and how you feel after the session. So how would you rate your current confidence level when using Microsoft Excel? You've got 6 levels of confidence there, from wobbly jelly, which is no confidence at all, through to unicorn power. If you're number 6, then I don't know why you're here. You can probably teach me some stuff about Excel, which is fine. Fabulous. You can see there's only 2 people, 3 people. I'll just give a few more seconds before we move on. And what we'll do is at the end of the session, we'll come back to this and hopefully we've got a little bit of increased confidence at the very least. Maybe you won't all be level 6, but you'll be on your way there. So which version of Microsoft Excel do you normally use? So there are multiple versions. You've got a desktop version, which is the app that you download and install onto your system. You've also got the web or online version, which you access through a web browser. And you've also got a mobile and tablet app version, which we're not going to be looking at today, but we will be having a quick look at some of the differences and just some things that you might need to be aware of so you don't get caught out. I never use Excel. Nice.
Can I ask a question about that? So when you open Excel on your desk, on your laptop or your desktop, then it's just using a program, right?
Yeah.
That's not what you're asking here. That's not an app?
Yeah, so if you've installed it onto your computer, so if you can find it in the start menu, are you on a Mac or Windows?
I'm on Windows here.
Yeah,
right.
so if you can search for it in your
so it just comes up whenever I could actually do something. Okay.
So
then my answer is wrong.
That's fine. It's just so I know.
So you mean I just have it installed as a okay.
And we'll come on to this in a moment, but depending on your operating system, depending on a few different settings, if you get sent a link to Excel, it might open it in a web browser, it might open it in your desktop version. So it's just something to be aware of. Okay. But if you're accessing it through Chrome or Microsoft Edge or Safari, then that's the web browser version. I think as technology increases, the distinctions between these different versions is getting more and more blurred. I don't think it'll be that long before it is just the same functionality across all of the different application versions, but we're not quite there yet. So let me know, what can you or do you use Microsoft Excel for? Again, I'm interested to know. You've got a minute to add some things into the chat. But if nobody wants to add anything, that's absolutely fine as well. That's why I've just added a minute timer. Maybe you've got no idea, and that's absolutely fine as well. I've had a lot of coffee this morning, so apologies if I talk at the speed of light. There's a lot of caffeine running through my veins right now. Percentages, grading. I assume that's you, Marlene. Yeah. Budgets, yes, absolutely. Portfolio. I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I mean,
okay, that I mean that grading their portfolio, and it breaks
Oh, I
into different
see.
percentages.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's bringing everything up that I said. And but yeah, so I need to know, 50% for that, for 20% for that, and my teachers are creative, so they cannot do percentage.
Oh dear, because I don't know much about percentages either, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, but that's obviously
We'll do
why.
our best.
Yes, that's obviously why an Excel sheet is very good, because it does it.
Even without using Excel, I will do my best to avoid percentages. So I think okay, this is the last question for this part of the session. So have you downloaded the desktop version of Excel already? And again, if you have not, we will just have a little bit of time to explore how to do that as well. So we've got one yes, we've got a couple of no's. Fine.
Okay, I lost your. I don't know. I lost the code, so I'm sorry.
That's all right. Do you want me to pop the QR code
Yes,
back
if you
up?
can just, yeah, if you could just put that back. Yeah, thank
There's
you.
the QR code.
Yeah, that's it. I could do that on the phone.
Fab. Okay, so we've got one yes, one no. What we'll do is we'll maybe take a few minutes just to show you how to do that as well. One person hasn't voted. Okay, so we're 50-50. We'll take a little bit of time just to go through that as well. So we'll come back to this at the end of the session, but that is it for the WooClap for now. So what we'll do is if you go to office.com, actually I'll open this in an incognito window, so I have to do the full process. Office.com. And if you actually office.com here, we're going to sign in up in the corner. We're going to sign in with our Goldsmiths credentials, like so.
So if we have it already, we don't need to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Not essential to do this, and then you come to this Microsoft 365 page, and you can click up here and press Install Microsoft 365 apps, and that'll download the package to install. It will differ slightly if you're on Mac or Windows, and then once you've installed that, you'll be asked to sign in again with your Goldsmiths username and password.
If you already have a package, would this put in a new version or the newer version? Is it a newer version Goldsmith has?
No, so Goldsmiths has the power to pick which version it deploys to people in Goldsmiths. So an example of this is that if you subscribe to Microsoft on a personal basis, or your organization doesn't have any concerns about AI, then the most recent version of Microsoft apps have got lots of cool AI tools built in.
I have noticed that.
Yeah, so Goldsmith's version does not have that at the moment. So it depends on your organizational policy. But
I'm sure it is, but my computer was my own before.
Yes, exactly. So if you're using your own subscription, which some people do, then you'll find that the features might be slightly different. But you'll find that that's a feature across many different pieces of software when accessing through an institutional account. It's not just Goldsmiths. So, like I said, press download, you'll be prompted to log in. You might have to do multi-factor authentication as well. So what we will do is I'll pop this link in the chat here. And this is just a bit of an overview between the differences between Excel on the desktop and Excel on the web. And it's worth having a little look through this. I'm not going to spend ages going through, but because Excel is so powerful, it's worth bearing in mind that some formulas, some functions differ slightly in the way that they work. and the syntax that is required between desktop and web versions. So if I'm working on a piece of if I'm working with data that I'm just going to be using, then I'm going to be using the desktop version. But then if I want to share that with somebody and I create a link to that and it opens it in the web version, some of the more complex formulas might throw up errors or they might not work in the same way. So, you need to decide or keep in mind rather that these differences do exist. For simple things, you'll be absolutely fine. I don't think ever run into an issue, but if you're working in finance perhaps, or you're working with huge data sets, you may run into some issues. And you can see, we've got everything from file formats that are supported through to features that are different. We've got functions that differ. I will say as well that I often use Excel, or have used Excel in the past, to connect data from other Microsoft applications. So that's particularly important if you've done forms or quizzes using Microsoft Forms, and you want to analyze that data in Excel. Then it's going to be much easier if you keep it all on the web rather than downloading it as a desktop, downloading that data and using it on the desktop version. And also if you're using a piece of software called Power BI, which is a really complicated and difficult to use data analysis software. Again, I find it much easier to work on all of this on the web rather than downloading it as the desktop version. But for today's session, I'm going to be using the desktop version, and that's simply because I have the data all ready to go on my laptop. So I'm going to share now the data that we're going to be using for this session. And I'll pop this in the chat. So please download this data to your own device, because what will happen is if you start working on it if you don't download it, then you'll start messing up the data for everybody else, which we want to avoid. This has happened to me in the past. Not in the Excel workshop, but when I've needed to use data in other workshops. I do have a backup, so don't worry, which I can restore if necessary. Goldsmiths, it's fine. I'll set an expiration date for tomorrow. So, you click that link, it should take you to a OneDrive folder. It looks a bit like this. Let me just go along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tick the little box and then press download up here. And that will plop it into my downloads folder. You just pop it somewhere that's accessible. Could be on your desktop. If I click on this, you'll see that it opens in WebExcel. I know it's WebExcel because we're still in the web browser. I can see Marlene is looking at this cell in particular because I can see her icon up here. I can see her little icon next to the cell that is highlighted. Okay. So you all just give me a thumbs up or pop a message in the chat when you've downloaded it. Fab. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'll use this version. I don't know where that's flown off to. I've got that many desktops open. It just kind of pops it wherever it likes. Never anywhere useful. Right.
All right. So how is it just a sheet?
So
no, it has things in it. So
yeah, so we've got two
okay,
worksheets. So we've got the sales data and the
does
employee
it look like
data.
I uploaded this? I mean, downloaded this?
Is it in your downloads folder?
It was, and I don't know if this is the one I have open.
Well, you've come off this one. So I assume you've downloaded it. Has it opened it in the desktop version of Excel? Has it got
That's a good question. Auto save data, save to this
Yes,
PC.
that's what we want. Save it to your PC.
Upload. Upload. Just a moment. And then we're uploading it. Okay, does it look like I'm now data saved?
Do you want to share your screen just to be sure?
So I don't mess you up. Okay, hold on. Share. Can I share?
Don't worry. If somebody edits the data, then I've got a backup so we can easily restore to that. It's
okay, I'm just going to try to edit. I'm just going to put something in. Did it come in? Under sales reps? There's nothing there, right?
No, nothing there.
Okay, so I put.
So good to go.
Okay.
Fab. Okay, so this is the data we're going to be working with. It is completely made up by me. So we've got some sales data, and you can see that this has just been inputted very basically into Excel. There's nothing fancy. There are no formulas, no functions. How do I know that? Because as I click around, you can see that this box is just displaying the numbers that are in this cell. Okay. On my employee data sheet, this looks a little bit different. This has got this nice blue coloring to it. My rows, my title row across the top here has got these nice little arrows for filtering out the data, which we don't have here. Admitting somebody to the lobby. And the reason for that is that this data here has been formatted into a table. If I click on here, you can see that we get this extra tab for table. And this is basically just a unit of data that has got a specific name. And this makes things a little bit easier because this data can be referenced using the table name. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rename this table the same name as the sheet. And this will help us later on. And you'll find that there's been a bit of a shift in the way Excel works. If I downloaded data from Microsoft Forms, for example, it will pre-format it into a table. When I first learned to use Excel when I was at school, I don't know, like 15 years ago, tables weren't a thing. All of the data looked like this. I quite like tables. I'm sure some Excel purists despise them, mainly because they work a little bit differently, but I think it's a much easier way to work with data. So I'm just going to pop into here, employee data, and hit return. Table names have to be formatted specifically. I think if you use numbers, then you get an error message saying you can't number your tables. They have to have a unique name. But it's fine because we're not using any numbers in our table name today. And what we'll do is later on, we might find that we need to reformat this as a table, which is fine. And the lights have just gone off in my office. So what we're going to do is we are going to try to automate as much of the data processes as we can. And that's really the bread and butter of Microsoft Excel. It's all about finding shortcuts, using the functionality of Excel to speed up how we pop our data in. And of course, if it's automated, then there's less margin for human error, which is really important. Hello.
Can I just ask, so the other sales data that you had in the other things, did this just make it into a table, or did you have to enter it into each?
Um,
I mean, does it just make it into that? Or did you
um,
have to enter each category into, or can you just paste it in a sense?
I'm not sure what you mean.
I
So,
mean that if, so in the other one, in the employment data in the
mm,
table,
mhm.
there's a column for each of them. Do you have to enter it, or can you paste?
So if I've got data elsewhere, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
And I
so
want
say
to
you
bring
have
it
it
in.
all written
Okay.
out, it says in lines,
So
and then
yeah.
yeah,
So
obviously usually that would make it into, you know,
so by
yeah,
default, if I paste data in,
yeah,
it will paste it in like this.
yes,
So for your example, if you download all of the grades from Turnitin,
yeah,
it's going to look like this.
yes, and then but
But
it doesn't automatic.
if you want to paste it in as a table,
Yeah.
what I can do is I can go to Insert Table,
Uh-huh.
and then I can, just kind of set this up as a, however many
Yeah,
columns
however
I
long you
want.
need it to be. Yeah,
And then I've got a new table, and then I can paste my data into the table. So if I just come back to this, for example,
yeah,
and just copy and paste this in,
yeah.
I'll just copy and paste onto this new
And it will
worksheet.
just do it. It'll put it into columns.
It should automatically pop it in.
Excellent. All
And
right.
and you can see that it's automatically resized the table to fit my data. The only thing that hasn't happened is it's popped this across the top. So maybe if I do that, um,
Yeah, the column
and
thing. So you just get
yeah,
rid of that. Yeah.
there we are. So I've just copied
Oh,
and
and then if you
pasted it.
get if you get rid of that, it just moves it up.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
So if I just go back a few steps, if I go back to my table, go to
Yeah. So
Insert
I'm
Table.
apologizing if this is logical to
No,
everyone
no, no,
else.
no. Don't apologize. I click this button that says my table has headers, and that's those header columns that you saw across the top. If I
It has. Yeah.
if I leave this unticked, oh, it's added them in anyway. Probably because if I just go back and copy and paste that again,
Oh, then it won't.
and let's try again. There we are. Yeah.
So if you don't click my table has columns,
My table has headers.
headers,
Yeah.
then it'll use the headings of the columns.
Yeah. Yes. So the distinction between the headers, between the tables and not using tables is really down to yourself.
Yeah.
It might make it easier, especially if you're planning on automating the data with other tools like Power BI, like Power Automate, which are other applications within Microsoft Office, then I would suggest using tables.
Yeah.
If it's just stuff that you want to analyze by yourself, then maybe a table isn't the way forward. I also think it's a bit nicer to look at just
Yeah.
generally, which is completely
Well, it also
personal
gives you
preference. Yeah,
it gives you the tabs, so
you've got
you
this
can
nice
you actually have
blue
a search,
layout.
yeah, and you have a search engine
Yes, you
on the
can.
table, right? So you
Yes,
can
you can
see
filter this
all the
out.
blanks, or
Um,
whatever
but
you want.
of course, it is also you can add the filters to non-tabled data. If I select my top row here and go to filter,
Over in sort and filter. Okay, I
yeah,
see.
and then this adds that feature.
Since I'm bothering you, where did you when you did the code functions, where was that? Because I can't see that anywhere. How did
So
you?
it's in this function bar across the top.
Oh, it's just in the function bar.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But we'll come on. We'll be
Yeah.
using that a
Okay.
little bit later on. So I'll just delete
Function bar.
this, otherwise we're going to get confused. If anybody else has questions, of course, pop them in the chat. Do just shout out. Yes, delete the sheet. So we're going to start on the employee data tab, and what we're going to do is we are going to actually no, we're not. I've jump a step ahead. What we want to do is we want to look at our sales data. That's the first sheet. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a bit of an overview. Okay, we want to look at this data. We want to find out how much, we want to format the data so it's in pounds. We want to calculate our totals. And what we want to do is we want to see how much profit we have generated for the past year. So where are we? We're in 2023. So this is all of our sales from the 1st of January 2023 through to the end of December 2023. And we're also going to be looking at the employee data. We're going to be imagining that this is our only expense, okay? So we want to find out whether or not we're in profit or loss. Okay?
Okay.
So we're going to start by adding in a new sheet, and we're going to call this overview. So I'm just clicking this plus to add a new worksheet. I'm going to double click on the name, and we're going to call this overview. And I can rearrange these tabs just by clicking and dragging. Okay. We're just going to pop in a bit of a title, overview. We can use the formatting tools to make this look a bit nicer. So we maybe want to do our total profit. Oh no, I think it's revenue, isn't it? All of the money coming in, our expenses, and then we'll calculate a profit from that. Okay, so we can do our total sales. Let's do that. Total sales, total expenses, and then we can have our total profits. And what we're doing here is we're just kind of we're just going to pull the data from these multiple sheets, and we want it to just give us a quick overview of that rather than having to click through these tabs to find the data that we need. It's just sometimes nice to have a separate sheet with only the key information. So we're ready to go here. If I double click, so you can see that because total expenses and overview is overspilling the width of the cell, I can actually just double click between each column. So can you see that as I move the cursor over here, we've got this kind of black line with the arrows either side. When we get this icon, double click, and it will resize the column to fit the content.
It does it automatically then?
Yes, rather than clicking and dragging and trying to get it. Yeah, you can just double click. And the same goes if it's too big, double click. And we'll make these bold. Why not? That will make them a bit bigger. If anything is too small on my screen, please do just say, and I will make it clearer. So I've made that
and
text
then you'll
bigger,
double click. Yeah. Oh, cool. Is that true for all tables? This is not just, is that true when you have a table in Word as well? Do you just double click?
No. So in Word.
Okay, this is only.
This is Excel only.
Because that's a nice feature.
It's really helpful. I remember it's one of the few things that I've taken away from doing IT skills when I was like in year 10. It's one of those things that's really stuck with me because it's just so easy to quickly do. So let's go to our sales data tab. And what we want to do is we are going to calculate our total. Okay. So that's going to be our cost per unit times the quantity. Yes, just simple maths. So we're going to start by putting an equals in that cell. And equals signifies to Excel that we're going to do a formula or a function. Okay. I want to do this, and you can see as soon as I put that equals in, our cursor changes again to our white plus. Okay. And as I move around, we've got this kind of green outline. That means we're going to select a cell. So we want to select this one, and we've got the funky dancing line, and we want to do multiply. And there's no like cross as a multiply sign in Excel. We use an asterisk. So depending on your keyboard, it's going to be Shift and the 8 key. If your keyboard has a number pad, you might have a separate key specifically for asterisk. And we're going to
okay.
Yes, we're going to then click our next cell, which is quantity. And then we've got it dancing in a different color. And then I'm going to press enter. And that will multiply those two things together.
Okay.
And that is a formula. It's a mathematical equation that we're doing to produce.
And you just remember that multiply is asterisk.
Yes, that is just the way it works. And
okay,
similarly,
so that's why I have this sheet that has all the formulas that you're supposed to remember.
Yeah. And then, so obviously your keyboard has got plus and minus. We've got the plus key, which is on top of the equals key. We've got minus, which is the hyphen key. But for division, we use the / as well. So division is / and the asterisk is multiplication. And then we press enter to get our result. And I could go through and do the same again. So we do this one and click and multiply.
So there's no way of highlighting all of them at once.
What we're going to do now is we're going to speed this up. So I've done that function once, that formula once. And what I can do is, can you see there's a little box, tiny little square in the corner? If I come over and click, move the mouse over, we've got the plus, but this time it's black instead of white. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. What that's going to do is that's going to copy that formula all the way down into all of these cells. And as I drag, it's going to apply, it's going to update each row, the formula in each row accordingly.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So now, if I click, you can see that our cell references are correct. So we started just by putting in H2, which is this one, multiplied by G2. And you can see it's updated it to H3 and G3, H4 and G4, all the way down. So that's just one shortcut. And again, we're eliminating that human error. And you can imagine if you've got a huge complicated spreadsheet with all of these numbers, we want to eliminate human error as much as possible. Because, if you're doing something properly financial, and it needs to be audited, you could be, it could go very, very badly and you could end up being prosecuted, because of a mistake that somebody's made, potentially. Not to panic
just
you all.
tell me again what plus and minus was.
So they're just the plus and minus keys on your keyboard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the plus on my keyboard is on top of the equals key. So we press shift and equals.
I have it,
and then minus is the hyphen.
Yeah.
I
have a keyboard. All right.
So we've calculated our totals. That's great. However, it's not in pounds. We want it to be in pounds. We want it to look nice in pounds. So what we need to do is we need to change this up here, this little drop-down box. And this is basically, this dictates how Excel interprets the content of each cell. So you can see right now it's on general. In fact, it's on general for all of the cells. And that is the default when you open Excel. Depending on your data, it might attempt to guess. I come over here. Oh, it hasn't done it for date. Oh no, it has. It's done it for date in this one. So you can see there's a number format for date. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select my cells by clicking and dragging.
Currency.
Click down and we're going to press currency. There are two options, currency or accounting. I'm actually going to go for accounting because it looks nicer.
Well, not that maybe, but can you do different currency?
Yes, you can.
So you could.
If I go to more number formats, it brings up a more complicated
so you go into
dialogue.
symbol,
Yeah,
and you can do
change it
do
to
basically everything.
Yeah. I don't know if you can do everything.
Well, whatever is on the stock exchange, right?
Yes. I've got a bunch of different things. I've got rupees,
that's very cool.
Bitcoin, controversial. All sorts of different ones. Not all of them have got symbols. If we scroll down, yeah, so plenty of different options, and the same goes for currency as well. Change the symbol, change the decimal places. And you can go through all of these and kind of tweak what it looks like. And you often find people sometimes get confused because it will format the numbers automatically, and it might make things look a bit weird. Always worth coming into this dialogue and just double checking. So I'll pop that onto accounting, and we've got that nicely formatted there. If I come over to date, so it's formatted these as date automatically, but if I go back into that dialogue, I've got lots of different options on formatting the date. I can also change the location. So like in the States, they obviously do month before day. And then all of the UK ones have got the day before the month.
So do you get different, I'm just now curious, do you get different names for the week if you do a different country?
Let's have a look. Let's see if I can remember the names of the month in French. Yes.
Well, so definitely Mars and Mercredi and whatever you had. If you
Let's see if
it
Wednesday. If it does romanization for something like Hindi.
Greek or something.
Yeah, have we got Hindi?
Yeah, Hindi or Hebrew or what?
It does. So it actually does. It does Hindi numbers.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, of course, because you can do this. It obviously works in every language.
And it does. It actually has Hindi as well, even though it's just months are usually just English transliterated. So yes, so great. Very, very useful. So I'll pop this back to how it was.
Yes, too. Does the Control Z button work in Excel? Can you redo things that way, or do you have to physically change it? So can you do the, when you do Control X or whatever it is on a Mac, the Apple Mac, does that bring you back to what it was? Or do you...
Control Z.
Yeah.
To undo. Yes. So you can undo anything.
And you can do copy and paste and all the same word commands. Okay.
So we'll leave this as the date, and of course you've got time formats as well, but we're not going to be looking at that today. So I want this to be the date with the slashes. That looks fine. So we'll just press OK. Fab.
Okay, so if you had put it in whatever way, would it then translate it? So say you had done it with slashes and say you were slightly all over the place while you've been doing your data, and will it then reform it all?
Yeah, so if I had this in multiple different formats, so sometimes it had the slashes, sometimes it said the 3rd of July,
American
2023.
Or all that.
Yeah. I could just select all of them.
And they would just become one thing.
And it should automatically redo it, but it doesn't always work.
So you might have to
depends. It depends on where the data's come from and how it's been formatted. But if I've copied something, if it's come from like a Word document, for example, you might run into issues because it just simply might not realize that it's a date. But you see, because I've already set the date format in a particular way, if I change, if I type in a different format here, so if I did, that's the 10th of March. So if I do 10 March 2023, it will
Oh, it just automatically bring that.
it will revert it to the format that I've specified. Another thing to be aware of is these little decimal place counters. So if I select my data, I can remove or add in decimal places.
Oh, cool.
So again, if you're using percentages, you might just want it to 2 decimal places or to no decimal places, and it'll just automatically round anything accordingly.
Yeah.
Using your decimal place controls here. Okay, so that looks good. Let's go back to our overview tab, because now we need to do some maths to get this up and running. So we want to do our total sales. So we've got a few options. What we can do, we'll go to our sales data. I could do an auto sum on this sheet. And there's a really quick button for doing that. I can select all of my data like this. And I've got an auto sum button up here. Press that once, and it will calculate our total at the bottom.
Oh, can you just show me that again? I'm sorry.
So I've selected my data by clicking and
where
dragging.
the button is. Yeah.
And I come up here and I press auto sum.
Okay.
Alternatively, same way of doing it, a little bit longer. I can do equals. I can do sum. This is a function. It's a predefined calculation that Excel has. Then I can select my data range. No, I can't. Sum. I press enter, and now I can do my data range.
And then it'll come. Okay, and then
it should do. I don't know why. Oh, maybe I need to do some equals. There we are. Need to do my my brackets. Sorry. There we are.
What's in the bracket?
So I need to pop my brackets in for me to select the data range. To be quite honest, I'm not sure why it's not doing it automatically. With every function.
Can I just ask about the sum thing? So say, for instance, you wanted to see the sum of every 3 or 5 columns. So, the first 5 and then 3, and you made a collection. You wanted that to be calculated in the column next to them, and then do the final calculation at the end. So say you
wanted, so if you wanted to just pick out specific values within the total column.
Yeah.
So you could probably use sum if.
But so I would say, so say for instance, you did from 1 to 5, you wanted the calculation of those things, and then
I could do sum.
Yeah.
I don't know what. Normally, you get the brackets added by default. So if I just show you this, so if I do a range, you can see that we've got I2 colon I46. That specifies a range of data, and you can see that the whole thing is doing the blue. It's highlighted blue, and you've got the dancing line. Alternatively, I could do this, and then if I hold oops. So we've got I2. I can do a comma. And I can select another cell. And then I can do another comma and select another cell. So this enables me to select individual cells from my.
But it comes at the bottom, but you could put it next to it, potentially.
So yeah, I mean, if I wanted to put the formula in this column, I could do that.
Which would be a total of that you would just put it because that's so. Say this is where I'm needing. So say you, for instance, had 5 numbers, and that's one total, and then another 5 numbers next to it, which is one total, and then you need to make a percent, and in between those two in the next.
What we'll do as we get towards the end of the session, we'll do some quite complicated stuff, hopefully, if we have time, which will
Yeah.
enable us to
Yeah,
filter.
I'm sorry, I'm getting you off your.
No, it's all right. We'll be
off
able
your.
to filter down specific values for particular categories. So we can filter down, get all of the information just for one particular region, or just one particular category, or just one particular payment method.
Yes.
So yes. So we can do our sum by that. So we'll just do auto sum. So now we've got this value here. So we know that this is the total of all of our sales. So what I'm going to do, we're going to come back to overview.
Okay.
We're going to do total sales. And again, we want to do we want to automate this. I could copy and paste it, but then later on, if I discover that actually one of these numbers is wrong, I update it. Let's say this is actually, this was actually 80 units sold. You can see I update this updates, and then this updates.
Yeah.
If I copy and paste that over, that number's not going to update. So I need to reference that. So again, we're going to use our equals sign. We're going to go to sales data, and we're going to click that one cell.
Yeah.
And you can see that we've still, in our formula bar, got
everything
what we're working with.
Yeah.
So it's done sales data exclamation mark. And that means that that's the sheet that we are referring to. And then we've got the cell reference, which is I-47. I'm going to press the tick, or I'm going to press enter on my keyboard. There we are. And all that's done is it's just referenced the cell.
And then whenever it changes on the other sheet, it changes there as well.
Exactly. So let's update this to 80. This is updated. This is updated. Okay.
Great.
So now we're going to do our total expenses. And we've got this list. But because this is formatted into a table, it's going to reference the data in a slightly different way. In this instance, I don't even have to do an auto sum. Let's try and let's go ahead and pop
because it's a table. Okay.
A function in here. So I'm going to do this. We're going to do sum. I'm going to do brackets. I'm going to come over here to employee data. And can you see how it's referenced this different?
Yeah, as a salary and not as yeah.
Alternatively, I could actually just click that, I think. We'll soon find out.
So are you clicking copying it?
No, that didn't work how I wanted it to.
I mean, how are you transferring it over?
So all I'm doing is I'm going to my cell where I want the total.
Yes.
We're going to do sum. Bracket, open bracket, and then because we're going to reference something, my cursor has changed to the white plus.
Okay.
I'm going to click on my.
Yeah.
I'm going to select.
And what? And do right click, or what do you do? Or do you just highlight it?
Click and drag. Click and drag. And then I'm just going to press enter. And of course, we want this to be formatted as a number for it to be useful, for it to have meaning. There we are. And I haven't done, I've done a sum, but notice how we've got, it's detected automatically.
It's calculated,
that it's using the salary column. Okay. If I go back to this, if I extend my table just by clicking and dragging, I've got a new employee.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and nice. You can give yourself a good salary.
And then if I add something in, it's automatically updated this.
Huh. All right.
Oops. It's automatically, because this is formatted as a table and it's reading the whole column, anything additional that's added on to this table it will automatically update my formulas.
But that's not the case in the other one.
That's not the case if it is formatted without the table.
Okay, so what would you do then? You couldn't add a person, but you can change the numbers.
You would have to go through and recalculate.
And do it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would have to, if I added another transaction underneath here, I would have to so I would obviously have to.
So if you put yourself in there, yeah.
So if I add in another row by right-clicking, insert.
It all then gets more complicated anyhow.
Yeah. So because I've actually added that row in, just add it in here instead.
It can start messing around your whole table.
So can you see that the range hasn't changed? It's still I2 to I46.
Oh, 46. Yeah, which means it's not going to give you
it hasn't included I47. So
yeah.
if I added in a new transaction underneath, it's not going to be added into my sum. So that's what I mean. Sometimes with a table,
tables are better.
Yeah. Tables aren't better. Tables are sometimes more useful. You have to make you have to make the decision on the data that you're working with.
Okay.
You know, if you want to automate it as much as possible, therefore reduce human error.
And so the way you did the table was just insert table into that, or you just highlight it and make it into a table.
Yeah. So I mean, if I
just make it just so I know how to make a table again.
Yeah. So I started the example that I used before as I created the table, and then added the data to it. If I come into here and go, if I've got this data existing, and go into insert table, it's already detected my data there.
Yeah.
And then I can just press OK and it'll transform it into a table.
Okay.
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 So we've got our information here. Our total profit is going to be our sales take away expenses. So again, we can use a simple formula, which is going to be this. Take away, so I'm using the hyphen, this, and it's in brackets because it's a negative number. If I go back to home, I think if I change this to currency, there, we've got a minus number.
Oh, that's so sad.
I'm not an accountant. I'm sure there is probably a reason for that, but I don't know what it is. I imagine that some accounting software probably doesn't like numbers starting with a hyphen, but I'm not 100% sure, and that's why it's in brackets. I'm sure Excel probably doesn't like it if it's hyphenated either, which is why the default is to have it in brackets. So that is how you reference across different sheets. There is a way to reference across different files, but that's not good practice. So I'm not going to show you how to do that, because you can imagine as soon as that file is moved from its location, your other file that's referencing that data is going to throw up lots of errors. The way you get around that is using things like OneDrive or SharePoint, but that's not the topic of this session. I will be doing a session, I think, early next term about how all Microsoft apps talk to each other, where we'll maybe be exploring that kind of functionality. But for this session, we're just going to pretend that it doesn't exist. So we've got this as a minus, which is not great if our company is losing nearly 300 grand. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do something called conditional formatting, and that enables you to format how cells look depending on their contents. So I'm going to select the cell that I want this to apply to. I'm going to press this conditional formatting. Got lots of different rules that I can kind of play with. I'm just going to click on New Rule to open up my dialog. And I'll just go back into here. So we've got, these are all just presets. I could have just gone, because I want it to be less than. Opens the same dialog. It's just going about it in a different way. So I'm going to go new rule. We're going to go for classic. And
so you mean you can make your minus red?
Exactly, that's what we want to do. We want to set this up so that our this goes red if it's in the red, and
so if it has
profit,
a minus attached to it. So if it has a certain thing attached to it, you can make it.
So what I can do is we'll go highlight, we'll do less than. Only cells that contain cell value. I always find it helpful to read these out. I don't know why it just goes into my brain when I'm thinking about it. Cell value. So we need to select our cell, which is this one.
And if it contains a minus.
And actually, we want this to be only format cells that contain cell value less than 0. That's what I mean. You need to say it out loud. Cell value less than 0. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
So we're applying the formatting to this cell.
So it's not actually a number. It's just but they see that the 0 is the minus as a number, of course.
And we've got, and we'll make it red.
Yeah, like always. Okay.
And then I can apply another rule. So now I want to do greater than.
And you can make it blue.
And we can make it green.
Oh, green.
Less than 0. Greater than 0.
Yeah.
I can actually change this to greater than or equal to.
Oh, yeah, okay. Huh. Cool.
And then what happens if it is 0? Then we probably want it to be yellow, right? So we can do it again. But this time we don't want greater than or less than. We want it to be equal to. Equal to 0.
But since you said greater or equal to on the other point, will that then interfere? So say, for instance, you make it.
No, because if I just go back in, I do manage rules. Let's have a look at what we've done. I have done greater than or equal.
Okay.
So this is equal to, but if I go in and create a new, if I just do it over here, for example, and go to this one, I can actually change it to greater than or equal to.
Yeah.
So anything that is above 0 is going to be.
But then it won't show. But then it won't show yellow because you have doubled it up, right?
If I changed it to this one, greater than or equal to, then there would be a conflict.
Yes.
And it wouldn't know what to do, but I didn't. I used greater than or less than.
You didn't.
Yeah, so it's
try to confuse.
Yeah, it's a slight distinction.
It won't do a double. It won't do a double color.
No, I mean you can do this kind of color scale, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll leave you to explore that in your own time. So that's how you do conditional formatting. It's a very helpful tool to represent your data nicely.
It's highlighted now. Is that just is that because you did that, or?
Yes. So if I change my
Oh, you highlighted because it was total profit, or what? Why did you highlight it to pink?
This red.
Why is it? Yes.
Because
I mean it's red, but why is it pink as well? Why is it?
Oh, that's just the formatting that I selected.
Okay. So that's because it's a total.
Yeah. If I come back into my manage rules, I can change the way it looks.
But the other ones are not.
So I can do, so I only applied it to this one.
Yes, okay, you didn't do it to the other ones.
Yeah. I can change it completely. So I could change it to just red text.
Okay.
I can even go
Oh, I see, because all the other ones had a background too, didn't they?
Yeah, so I can customize it completely.
So the other ones would have come up with a background as well.
Yeah. It was
okay,
just because...
so it would be very clear whether you had, because it's not only the numbers, it had a color as well.
You can customize this however way you want. It's just I was using these examples because they're easily accessible and quick to demo.
Okay. So if it wasn't, in 0, or then it would have been yellow, and it would have been green and a green background.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, let me.
All right, that's fine. I was just wondering.
Let me, if I just change this quickly, so if I made this 1,000,000.
Yes, then it should be turning.
Oh, I can't. I don't know.
It's turning green, right? It might not let you do that. Oh yes,
there we are.
Then turns green. Okay, great.
If I make this, if I equal this out.
Yes, and then it'll be 0 and yellow. Okay. Well, that makes sense.
So let's just go back to. Yeah. So I've also got these options just to center things in cells so they look a bit nicer. Okay, so that's conditional formatting. We're going to go to our employee data now. And what I want to do is I want to extract from my employee data their first name. Oh, hold on. There we are. So I'm just double clicking, remember, to just resize everything to fit. I want to generate an alias for their email address. And I want to extract their first name and surname. This is going to all be automated. What I can do, oh yes. So we're going to use a combination of different tools. We're going to start by using something called flash fill. And this is a way to really quickly automate the extraction of information. So our first person is called John Smith. So I'm going to start by doing John Smith into our first name and surname. I'm going to select all of my cells in my table. I'm going to go to data, and I'm going to do flash fill. And now with a click of my mouse, it's applied the same logical reasoning to all of these. And it's just extracted the first name. It's looked at the data across the table and thought, okay, well, where's that data coming from? I see a match here. Okay, so I can now apply that match to the rest. I can do the same in this column. So again, select the whole column. Done.
So say, for instance, you had a double name in there. Would it,
a double barrel
if you
name.
had set it up, even if the double name was down the line, would it then put a double name into the surname? So, like say, for instance, that Robert Davis was Robert Davis Jr.
Oh, good question. Let's see what happens.
But you hadn't done it, you hadn't, he was in the middle. So you were not.
This won't,
so will it just think that a double name is the last name?
So because I've made a change.
Yeah, you've already done it, so you would have to do it again.
Yeah, exactly. The flash fill is, it's static. It's not dynamic. It doesn't.
Yes.
Okay, so it hasn't detected anything.
And it did see a pattern you didn't like. Okay. Yeah. So you would have to do that.
So yeah, so it's not doing anything fancy.
So you would have to, in that case, you would have had to have a middle column saying, second name.
Yeah. So what we can do, I mean, you can do it with formulas and probably extract it. But
then it gets more complicated.
Well beyond my ability. So now we're going to generate an alias. And what I mean by alias is, the first part of an email address. So like my Goldsmith's alias is CIRWI004. We want to generate an alias from our first and surnames. So we're going to use a formula, not a formula, a function. So remember, a function will start with some letters. We're going to use a function called concatenate, which is just a fancy way of saying sticking stuff together. There we are.
Okay.
Concat. Okay. And I can do my first piece of text.
Then how did they come up with our email addresses?
Yes, it probably uses a similar process.
Yeah.
It'll pull the information from the staff record system or the student record system, and then it'll apply something like this. And I want it to be first name dot surname. So my first name and surname are obviously coming from cells within my data, but because I'm adding a full stop, and that's not coming from somewhere, I need to put it into quotation marks. I'm going to do speech marks, dot.
So you just did one quotation.
I've encapsulated it all within.
Oh, okay, I see. All right. You have.
And then we're going to do comma again.
Okay, you're doing a comma. Okay.
For our third value, which is our surname. And because I've already applied my flash fill, I've just gone ahead and popped it all in. And now we can.
So because it's our, say they do this for our email addresses, right? Mm-hmm. And you were actually making up their email addresses. Could you give it assign a number afterwards? So each, John Smith gets one and.
Yeah, so you could add into this formula. I mean, maybe you've got another data set. So maybe you've got employee number, or maybe there's a, what's the word?
If you wanted just a number, you could say 01 afterwards or something.
Yeah, so I could do comma. It depends if you want it to be a dynamic value. So I could do 01, and that'll add 01 to everybody.
Or you could do 01 slash or something. Is that how you do dynamic?
No,
so it goes. So you can't go from 0 and then each one gets a new number. So
I could do. Let's have a think. I mean, I could generate a random number potentially.
Yeah.
So I would have to use another formula. So what you can do with Excel formulas is you can nest them within each other. So I would have to do something like random.
Okay.
So I could do, I think random array will do a general. It would be one of these two to generate a random number.
Okay.
Let's go with that one. No idea, this might throw up an error. Yeah, so it's come up with a problem. There will be a way to do it.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, with the numbering system that Goldsmiths uses, I think the way it works is if
one person
if there's somebody, if two people have got the same,
they get the next one.
if they've got the same letters, then it'll generate a new number, the next number in the sequence. So there'll be a very complicated formula in place in order to administer that system. It probably doesn't use Excel, but it'll use a similar kind of process where it looks at the name of the person it's trying to generate. It'll create the letter alias, and it'll be like, oh, okay, well, does this exist already? If yes, then it'll add the next number in the sequence. If no, then it'll start at 001. So that's a very, very specific example, but hopefully it illustrates how that kind of process will work.
Yeah.
So now let's do the same process, but with our email address. So we can use the same formula, because all we're doing is we're adding on something else at the end. So we can do concat.
Yeah.
And we're going to do.
There you could just do last name and then add our company.
Well, we want to use our alias.
Yeah.
And we want to do comma. And then because we're adding in text that isn't featured somewhere, it's not referenced anywhere, we're just going to do at company.com. And that text with a quotation. Ta-da.
And so the question is, what would happen if there were two people with the same name?
Well, you would have to implement some kind of system. So you would add in.
So you would have to physically go in and put in a one.
In this example, yes.
Yeah.
Like I say, there will be a way to do it with formulas.
But yeah.
but I don't know what it is.
Who knows? Maybe it is much. Maybe
I mean, you can essentially, I think you can nest up to 64 formulas within each other. So you could say, so you can use a piece of, you can use a formula called if, and you use if, and then you list the conditions. So if this name equals this name, then this needs to happen, if that makes sense. The if is a really powerful formula to use. So an example that I was using was analyzing student assessment results from a bunch of different departments. So what I wanted to do is, if I just wanted to extract the data from the design department, and I wanted to list all of the students who'd gotten 70% or more, I could go, if this column equals design, if the department column equals design, plus if assessment result equals 70 plus, essentially, and then it'll give me a list of all of the conditions of all of the results that meet those conditions. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's in essence how that would work. But we're getting into like programming level complication.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so that's how we use a formula to kind of generate something using text. What we're going to do now is we're going to go back to our sales data. And what I want to do is, we've got our sales rep column, which is completely empty. And this is going to be something that's manually updated. So how do I make sure that the data that goes into this column only uses, names that of people that exist within my company? So what we can do is we can use a feature called validate. And what that does is it will only allow you to input data in a particular format or from an existing data set. And it's, again, another way of reducing human error. Because if I was going to, I'm working as an accountant for my company and I'm going to cook the books to give myself a nice little payout, I could create a pretend employee, but with my bank details. Well, how do we safeguard against that, I suppose? So we're going to select the data that we want to work with, the column where this is going to go. So it's going to go in my sales rep column. So I've just selected all of that. We're going to come up here to data validation. And I can do a bunch of different things here. I can pop in an input message so that it could be, must be a number between 1 and 100, or must be an employee from this company. I can also customize the error message, which is quite nice. And this is really good if you're sharing your data with somebody. And what I'm going to do is we're going to do allow custom. I'm going to click into here. If I click this, it'll allow me to select my data from somewhere on my worksheet. Come over to my employee data. I'm going to select my list of employees. I'm going to press OK. This type of reference, let me do it before. There we are. So I need to, sorry, my apologies. I need to not do custom, I need to do list.
Oh, yes, of course.
That makes perfect sense.
So you could have made a formula that somehow.
Yeah, so if I did custom, then it would allow me to input a formula.
Like everyone had only people with the name of Anderson or something.
Yes, exactly. That would be a perfect example.
Yeah.
So we want to do list, and this enables me to select a list from somewhere. Yeah. So I'm just going to reselect that because it might format it slightly differently. Like that. And I'll press OK. And now,
if you put in Chris or something, then it will tell you.
I've got two options. If I start to type,
then it'll come up. Yeah.
Or I can select from a drop down of all of my employees.
And if you tried something wrong? So if you say Anderson, but you don't have, oh, you do Anderson with an E.
Let's do my mother's name. There we are. So
doesn't like
a message.
You have not. So either you have to, it'll tell you if you have forgotten to add somebody to your employment list.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great.
And of course, alternatively, what might be more appropriate is I go back into my data validation rules and look at my employee data. I might want to just do people
yeah,
who are in sales rep
yes
roles. You know, my graphic designer or my human resources person isn't going to be doing sales.
So you can click one column at a time.
Yeah, so I could just list particular people. So I could just do.
So how do you do that again? To just you just click on those and then how?
So I just
you have to do it individually.
Yeah, so I just do this. If I do Control or Command, if you're on a Mac, I'll be able to select. Let's have a look. There we are.
So you then have to do each column that are acceptable.
I have to do each individual cell. Yeah. And you made a good point there. There is probably a formula that I could write.
But it's all maybe in the job titles, maybe you could.
Yes. So I could filter these job titles down by
and have them just being sales reps, and then you could sort them as sales reps, right? And then you could just.
So I could write a formula that says if job title equals sales or contains sales, then list those names.
But could you could also just if you sorted that column, the job title column, right?
I could sort it, but that
would that not just bring them? Then wouldn't that put them? Couldn't you then just highlight those particular? But then of course, if you sorted it again, it would be a problem. But what if you do sort it? Does that make it a problem with your formula?
Well, let's have a go at doing it. So we'll do, and this is a good way to show you this particular feature actually. It's going to let me do it like this. Yeah, so hold on, let me just cancel.
Yeah.
So if I go to employee data, okay, and if I sort.
Yeah, so for just.
Okay. So we've got our.
All your sales people together now, right?
All of my sales people are here. So we've got sales manager and sales representative. Let's go back to this. We're going to do validate. And we're just going to do these ones, sales manager and sales reps, because they're now grouped together.
And then it just does it.
If we just look quickly in our source box, you'll see that now our cells have got these $signs.
Yeah.
What that means is that those cells are now referenced absolutely.
By themselves, not as numbers, but as themselves.
It means that if I add more things into my column or rearrange the rows, it's going to throw up some interesting results.
Okay,
let's
see,
I can't tell you exactly what they're going to look like.
No, but that definitely could be an issue.
We'll find out. And going back to that example that I used earlier, where I was using Excel to analyze student assessment results, I didn't use the $sign. And I got to the end of the project, and because I hadn't used the $sign, it messed everything up because I then had to go back and add in more data.
Yeah.
And it just caused chaos, and I had to redo everything manually. So yeah, it depends if you want the result to be relative or if you want it to be absolute. So if you don't have the $sign, it will. And then I add columns in, it will adjust those to be to follow kind of the new assignments of cells and rows. If you use the $sign, then it won't. It will always be those cells, if that makes sense.
But what if you then sorted them differently? Would that make a difference?
Well, because we've got the $sign,
it's
only ever going to be these.
Okay, even if we suddenly sorted it for names and everything would be different. Okay.
So we'll do okay.
So even if they suddenly make it into column 1.
So let's just check that this has worked. Yes, we've got our
Yes.
sales people here. We're going to go back to employee data, and we're going to change this. So we'll turn this off. Hold on, let me just do right. So we're going to filter. We're going to rearrange this and sort by name, and that has changed the order of the list. And you can see that this has now changed the names, I think. Has it followed it through? Yeah, so we should have Bob Roberts and Carol Cavini. And we now don't have them. Okay. So using the sort function is not appropriate for this particular example. You would need to write a formula that filters out those specific people.
Yep.
So because I need to have this set up in a specific way for my next example, we're just going to go back into this. We're just going to change this to all of these. Okay.
So what you obviously could do is to simply have a column with each person. So you didn't have all the employees together, but you had all the sales reps together, and you had and then it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, so like I said, you would need to write a formula that filters out using the job title. So, you know, you can filter this way, which is a very user-friendly way, but you can also write, like if I actually just go into a cell and do equals and do filter, you can see that there is already a filter function.
Yeah. And then you just do, the top of that. Okay.
Yeah, so if I do that, so I've got my array, so that means I need to select my data here. So filter, and then I would do equals, or I can't remember exactly what the
so that's actually
is.
So that's actually a safer way than to do columns, because columns can change.
So again, it's about using the formulas, the functions.
So that's when everything turns into chaos, when the columns
exactly
change.
And you know, because then what could happen is, let's say somebody gets promoted, let's say, you know, sales manager leaves, somebody who was formerly sales representative gets promoted to that position, and then a new sales representative gets brought in. You know, that means I'm going to have to then manually update my data validation. If I've got a formula set up that says filter out these results and apply and
only do it with sales rep, whoever that is.
Yes, exactly. So that is how we validate our data. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to quickly click through and just add a bunch of people.
And now you can see how much they've earned, right?
Well, what I'm going to do now is we're going to use
you could just highlight it now and paste it.
I could, but I need these to be different.
Well, you want the whole thing to be different.
I need it just be as random as possible. I'm sure there's a way to automate it. But what I want to do is I basically want to, because my company is in quite a lot of debt, I want to use a function of Excel to see how I can make some cost savings, or how I can get my company back into the profit. And I can't exactly remember how we do this.
Well, it sounds like you need to fiddle your expenses.
What we can do is we can use a few different pieces of functionality. What time are we on? I got half an hour.
Sorry, it's my fault.
No. I love the questions. It's really, really helpful. I'm nearly there. Basically, what I want to know is I want to know who hasn't been pulling their weight. with their sale, with my
Oh,
sales.
because you randomly just put people in. So
yes,
so
exactly.
This is as if they were working.
Yes. So what I want to do is I want to see how I can get my sales up or my expenses down. So I need to make nearly 300 grand in savings from my expenses in order to get my profits up. So just look at my notes.
So if you're 25,000 a year, are selling more than your 40,000.
So
look at that financial.
Let me just have a look. If we go to data, is it data? We want to do what if analysis. And this is getting quite complicated now. And what this enables me to do is I should be able what if analysis, goal seek. Yes. So I want to set myself, let's say my target is to be 100,000 in the profit, 100,000 in the green. So I can do set my cell that's selected here, to 100,000, 100,000, yes. By changing these cells. Okay, it's not that one. Area manager. Okay, so let's say I was going to say we should call this transformation program, but that's very cynical of me.
It's like very scarily Goldsmiths.
Right, let's have a look here.
You think this is what they're doing? This
quite possibly.
Something. Yes.
So changing these cells. Let's give it a name. Okay, so let's call it streamlining employees.
Maybe that's why it's so random.
Quite possibly. Reference must be on an active sheet. Oh, yes, I am on the active sheet. Close. Hold on. Go here. Right. Add.
I wish I could do something like this in a writing class. How to get how to get them to hand in a perfect script by streamlining.
This is what we want to do. So what I can do is I can go through each of my cells, say, okay, well, if I got rid of, let's see.
Anyone making?
Yeah, so I could
30,000.
let's say I decide actually, so without changing these cells specifically, I can be like, okay, well, maybe I don't need a graphic designer or a data analyst.
Yeah.
So I can look at cell G7 for my graphic designer and pop in 0. I can find my financial, my data analyst.
So you're firing people now.
Yes, and I can pop in 11G, G11, and pop in 0 for that one. That's okay. And your
software designer can be handled by your IT support or vice versa.
So I can press show, which will update those into there. Oops.
And then you can see whether or not that did any.
So I can see that has now reduced my expenses appropriately. I go back into my scenario manager. I should be able to then remove it. No, and it's made those updates. I thought the whole point of this was that it doesn't change the data, but apparently it does. And I can't remember. Changing cells. Okay. Maybe it is this. Maybe it is this one, and I've forgotten how to do it. Set cell. I'll have to revisit that. I've completely forgotten. It's not this one. Oh well. Anyway, we can also
All right,
do
we
this.
won't fire
Yeah,
anyone.
we still can. We're going to do it a different way.
Okay. Oh, we couldn't also just sell more or have some
Well,
expenses.
we could. What we
Maybe
can do
maybe they
is,
haven't done the expenses properly. Maybe they need to have an
what
expense for their house, and maybe they haven't added their cost of.
what a big thing at the moment is how can we make the data that we're working with interactive? How can we create something that means something to somebody who doesn't know much about data? And how can we add some controls to filter down to, you know, what's the word? Simulate some specific results. And that's
Because
what
what you
this,
were what you were wanting to do was to see who was working,
yes. So
who was
what we
getting most money, right?
yes, so I mean this is a way to do that, but alas, I have forgotten on how to do it. It is one of these options. But what we're going to do is we're going to do it a different way. So what we need to do is the first thing we're going to do is translate my data here into a table. Because
Okay.
this is one of those new features in Excel that only really works if your data has been formatted in a table.
Okay.
So we're going to select somewhere on here. We're going to go insert. We're going to make this into a pivot table. We're going to select all of my data here. And we're going to pop it on a new worksheet.
Oh, cool.
We can, of course, pop it onto the worksheet that we're working on. But just for this example,
Yeah.
I think it'll work better on a new worksheet. So that's going to add a new tab across the bottom. And now we've got something that looks terrifying. We've got this over here, and all of our data has gone. And
Yes.
what this enables us to do is we can add in specific data and generate a dynamic table from that data. So what we're going to do is we can add in some dates, some customer names. I'm just going to add in all of these that we had. Turn those off. And again, this looks absolutely terrifying. But what we need to do is we need to move this data around in order for
I
it
see. Now it's
to be meaningful.
Now it's each person.
So
Bank transfers.
if I drag my sales rep into my columns, I now get all of my employees across the top. Like this.
How did you change that look? You just changed the look of it, right?
No, so what it's doing is it's just basically changing the way the table looks depending on where the content has been added. So I've got my sales rep. So maybe actually, if I'm thinking about what I want the data to look like, I want my sales rep to be down the side, and I want the total, and I want the table data to be the total number of sales that they've made. Okay. So columns, we want our sales rep to be over here. We want that to be in there. We don't need to pop in the quantity, so we're not bothered about how many things they've sold. We're not interested in the cost per unit of what they've sold.
But definitely payment per method and probably not product.
We definitely want the total.
Yeah, and the payment. Probably not even the regions, anything. None of this matters, right? Or I mean, it could matter, but we're being a little mean. So it becomes their fault they're in a bad region.
So we can pop in the date. Maybe we don't want the date. Well, I mean, if I just do those two things, then that's the easiest way. So I can see the total number of sales per person.
Yeah, and you haven't actually seen whether it matters if they're in the north or south or whatever.
If I add in the region, then I can break it down by region.
Yeah, because that might still be something that matters.
I could actually pop into the filter here, region.
So it gets its own.
And then I've got this little box that's appeared at the top.
Okay,
and then I
so
can
yeah.
actually just pick those. So
Yeah,
if I
so you
decide,
can.
maybe London is my most profitable region. So I
Yeah,
can
so you.
say, okay, well, these 3 people have made the most sales in that region. These people have made those sales.
Yeah, and so
in
it's not
Scotland.
it's not necessarily their fault, but you may be using your sales reps wrong.
So, maybe actually if I decide that, well, okay, well, this is actually, Scotland has got £52,000 worth of sales. That's really, really helpful. I can put
Yeah,
more resource into Scotland, into my marketing strategy for
yes.
Scotland, if I decide that that's an area that's particularly useful. I could even add in, so if I decide I want to look at which product categories are selling best, I can add in
Yeah.
some product category filters.
Huh.
Move these around. Just trying to think of the
Yeah, so
best
you're
way.
not necessarily trying to get rid of people, you're trying to
Yes.
place them better.
If I'm thinking, okay, well, I want to see which categories are selling well in each area. I can remove my sales rep. Let's get rid of that. I want my regions. Of course, I filtered it down, so I want to change that. Let's turn off and select all. Clear filter. So I can see the total number of sales per region. So London has been 33,000. The Northeast, coincidentally, that's where
Yes.
I'm from, is through the roof. So obviously something's going great in the Northeast.
Yeah, maybe they're having a building boom or whatever.
Well, exactly. I can even, if I pop it into columns, then I can kind of say, okay, well, in London, computers were our biggest seller. So let's
Yeah,
focus our marketing on computers for London.
yeah,
In the Northeast, computers were also our biggest seller. So let's focus on that.
yeah. So obviously, this is clearly when they say we are not selling tablets anymore because it's not worth our while.
Let's go into, let's press this button up here, which is called a slicer. I can insert a slicer for let's do for a region. Make that a little bit bigger. And now it's kind of added in a clickable filter.
Oh, cool.
I go back to my table. All I have to do
This
to get
is
this menu back, I just click somewhere on my table. So I can now maybe remove the region from there because I've got a slicer that enables me to just do it for me.
Where did the slicer come from?
So if I come up here to pivot table analyze,
Oh, and then
I can do insert slicer here. So now maybe what I can do is I can add my sales rep back in, and I can have that down the side, and I can say, okay, well, in London, in the Midlands, the Northeast. I can also insert a timeline. I can just use the date for that. Now this sometimes goes a little bit crazy. I can filter it down to the whole year. If I just want to look at the first quarter of sales, I can do that.
this
And I
is
can
seriously
through.
advanced, and no one ever seems to do this, but this is an incredible feature.
Well, this is so if you're using Power BI,
Yeah.
which is another data analysis tool within Microsoft, this is all it does. And you can create really quite advanced and really snazzy looking
Yeah.
interactive data that enables you to you know, add all of these slices, make it really user friendly. And yeah, it's quite remarkable what you can do with it. But it all relies on you having your data in Excel set up in
Yes.
a very particular way.
Yeah, and set up properly. So there's
Yes.
yeah.
So, time are we on? Okay, we've got about 15 minutes left. Just under. Has anybody got any questions about what we've seen so far? You can also do the same thing. I'll just show you quickly. You can also do exactly the same thing, but instead of using tables, you can actually do it with charts. So you can create graphs. Oops, not that one. Oh, if I press the recommended button, go back to my my sales data, insert.
And Phoebe, you can just interrupt me.
I can do recommended pivot tables like this, but I can also do a pivot chart. And it works in exactly the same way, but I get a chart generated instead of a table.
Oh, very nice. Phoebe has a question.
Yeah, hi, Chris.
Hello, Phoebe.
Right, I think it's really helpful, particularly the pivot chart. I've seen it, but I haven't. Well, the way you demonstrate how to create is really great. Just want to go back. Just now you were trying to input a formula to select specific job titles. Could you just quickly give me that formula? I tried to input something, I can't really do it, and I try to Google it, which I always does. But I still can't. It might be easier to ask you.
Okay, so let's try and go through that example specifically. So what I want to do is I want to filter down my list based on, I want to filter this list based on the data in this column. Okay, so let me just turn off this sort. Okay. And I'm probably going to have to Google this myself. So what we need to think about is what the formula looks like. How does the data that we want to extract, how is that referenced within the formula? And we use the word syntax, the formula syntax, in order to, that's what it's called, kind of the way you construct a formula. So we want to Google, let's do Excel, filter, function, syntax. And I know that I've obviously already looked at this. So this is Microsoft's website. I know that it's going to be reliable. I've got a little video I could watch. I've also got it down here. So, oh, this is very similar to what we've got, which is nice. So, filter used to return multiple criteria. Does that fit what we're trying to do? Yes, it does. Let's just read this. But in the following example, we use formula filter to return records for Apple as selected in cell H2. So cell H2, product, empty, using an empty string. So I'll filter A5 to D20. So A5 to D20. So that's looking at the data in this. Comma C.
So then it goes into the next.
Equals H2. Filter multiplication operator to return all values in our array range A apples and are in the east region. So filter down. So can you see how we've got this separate set of brackets? That's called a nested function. So you can filter with sort. Okay, let's give it a go. Let's come back to our spreadsheet. Oops. So we're going to do equals filter. And you can see as well, you actually get a little
suggestion
of the syntax here. So we want to look at this column. That's our array. That's our data. And we want to do comma for our next value, include, and we want it to be in quotation marks, because it's what's called a string value, and string is basically just any text information rather than numerical information. I'm going to look for sales.
So you use that if it's a column, if you're doing a column.
I use what if we're doing a column?
That is one of the columns on another place, or it just makes a column. It calls it that. So what's the sales?
So we're trying to filter our list based on whether the job title includes the words sales.
Oh, sales. Okay.
Yes.
And you always do that when it's text.
Yes. So it's so you've got two kinds of values. You've got either a string value or a numerical value in Excel. Numerical value is a number.
Yeah, and that doesn't need a quote.
A string value is something that has letters. It's the easy way to remember it.
Yeah.
So in this table, for example, all of the data is string data. Yeah. They're all string values apart from salary, and that's numerical. And then if we don't have sales, let's do
manager.
Let's just do an X, for example. Oops. There's a problem with this formula. Maybe it is this specifically. And it's saying value, which means there's also a problem.
Yeah, that's hated thing when it does that.
If empty, let me do that. Okay. This is what I mean.
So what's the X supposed to be?
That's the value if nothing is returned. Do you know what? Let me try going back to this. Let me just delete this. I won't be beaten. Excel is very much one of those things where I don't use it enough for it to be
you just
ingrained into my head, but I'm very good at finding out exactly what I need to. So we want to validate the data. Let's try this again. Home, data validation.
Oh, I did have this weird sheet. I don't know if it's useful for anyone, but I found it somewhere, and I was trying to understand how to do this.
So try custom. I want to do formula is filter. It might not allow a function. Look at that data. Let's go back to our example here, just so I can double check. So we're filtering out all of this based on this. Right. Okay.
Sorry, Chris, I got the question.
No.
Maybe do other work. And I'm actually sorry that I have to go to the next meeting. I mean, you could, if you find out eventually,
but we can do it, and then you can look at the recording.
Yeah, we're still recording. So
Okay,
I think
great.
I have.
It's definitely a good question.
I think I've worked it out. So what we want to do is we're going to do. I'll give it one more go. We're going to do filter. We're going to do all of the data that we want to filter, which is this. Okay, and we want to do. We want to base our filter on this. We want it to equal. We'll do sales representative. And we want this to be, it's a string value, so it needs to be within quotation marks. Representative. And then if it's empty, if I just quickly go back to this, it was in, we'll just do that. There we are. So that's how we've done it.
Oh, so you have to highlight the whole thing, then
So
highlight the other one.
so that's
and
where
then...
I was going wrong. So we wanted to look at all of the data that we want to filter, which in this case is the whole of the table.
Could you send this file to the chat after
Yes.
spoke with these formulas? And I've just one last question. Thank you for doing that. Is there any AI tools instead of Googling, like they could just tell me which formula I could use or point me? Like I'm sure there's something there. It might be a paid service.
Let me go quickly to.
That's a good question.
I use ChatGPT, which
okay.
perhaps isn't recommended. If I just do, how do I use the filter function in Excel?
Oh, okay.
I will say never, ever, ever put your own filter, your own data into Excel. So if you come down here, I've got use the filter function, and then it gives me a nice little breakdown of how I can use it. So it's actually given me the exact, it's given me this, the breakdown of what to include in my argument, and then an example. Never, ever, ever put your own data in. You know, I'm not going to put in sensitive data, anything that can, you know, breach GDPR or privacy laws. But it's always a good place to start. You can be more specific. So say I want to filter this column by this result. And then it will tailor. But you can also use Copilot as well, which is the Microsoft's own generative AI tool, and that's available in Microsoft Edge.
Yeah, thank you for a suggestion.
So yeah, so that's how I would do that. I'll save this and I'll send it over along with the pivot, with this pivot setup as well. Is that okay? Fab.
Yep, that's all right. Thank you.
We're now over time. Any other questions?
Well, it's clearly just the beginning.
It takes a while.
Yes.
I mean, you've seen me struggling, like how on earth do I do that? It's just one of those things where unless you're using it all day, every day, then
also, of course, it's specific to whatever it is, right?
Yeah. It's difficult to come up with examples that are relevant. Like I can't tell you how many. I started off with the most simplistic data, but then I was like, okay, I need to add another column for this. I need to add another column for that for it to be actually worthwhile. And we've barely touched on any tools really, but yeah, it's.
So I have this. I don't know if it's useful, but I have this thing that I found somewhere.
Oh yes,
which is a handwritten thing, which is just kind of funny.
Very helpful. I often have cheat sheets with all of the shortcuts on for different tools. They're very, very helpful. Stick them on the wall in the office.
Yes. I suppose that's it. Well, I'm going to be joining you because you're doing the next one, aren't you?
Yes, Adobe. Oh, podcast. No, Acrobat is this afternoon.
Oh, so you're not doing the Create podcast
Is
at
that
2:00?
today? Oh, that's an Adobe RAN session.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, that's Alistair Black. Okay.
yes.
Yeah, I can't do the one on campus, so I'm sorry to be missing that again.
Oh no, it's all right. Not a problem. I hope
So
the
good.
session's been useful.
Oh, it has, but yes, I can see that I still have lots to go, so I'm just gonna have to keep
Yeah.
on watching it. But you're gonna do another one, right?
Yes, there'll be another one at some point in the future. It'll be after Christmas now.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of thinking, like, I'm finding that Excel is definitely on a lot of people's lists.
Well, I think
But
because everyone is being asked to know how to do it.
yeah, but part of the issue that I'm having is that because my Adobe sessions that I do, I'm splitting into kind of competence levels, proficiency
Yeah.
levels, which is great. But then I'm getting people who are turning up to the advanced ones because they can't make the earlier ones,
Yeah,
and then I
because
spend so much
you were
time,
doing it.
yeah,
Yeah.
recapping the other sessions. That the
Yeah.
people who have been to the other ones are like, why am I coming with it? This is just a repeat. So I need to have a chat with various people to decide, if I break this down, go into more detail and structure it more like a course, I'm happy to do that. But how do we get the messaging across that you need to go to the earlier sessions? And because it's co-curricular, there's no guarantee that people can attend every other session that's offered.
Exactly, because half of them I can't because they're on Tuesdays,
Yeah.
and I'm teaching, and they, and unless it's all in reading week, or maybe the summer term is better.
Yeah, I mean, my other thought is I record. This is the basics. Do a half an hour, 1 hour recording. This is the basics, and then in the sign up for other sessions, I say you need to have watched this video.
Yeah.
There's a bit of onboarding because we're.
But is that just on the maybe you just need the recordings to be available on the sheet when you get in there. When we sign up
on the booking system. Yes, I can embed those.
Yeah, I think that would be really also just to be able to just have a look and.
So that's probably what I'm thinking. Next term, I'm going to have a lot more free time. So I'm thinking that's maybe the best way forward. But I need to have a chat with some people to see if that's.
I mean, also people haven't been coming yet because they don't know that it's there yet.
Yes.
I keep trying to say to people is there, but of course the problem with students is that because of the funding, they're all working all the time.
Yes.
So when they're not in the class, they're working.
I mean, I've got a group of students who I ask constantly what works, how do we get the message out, and they all say the same. They all say, oh, do posters, do physical posters, but then I put posters up and nobody looks at them.
Okay, I think the best way would be in the cafeterias. You know how when you go into certain places and then these little things, these little, this is how you use the Wi-Fi or whatever. If there was one on every table of like little postcards kind of thing.
I'm gonna maybe get some. I'll get some posters printed then.
Yeah, but I think if it was on the tables in the cafeterias, students would, or in all the kind of places where they hang out. Library. Somebody said the library.
Well, I'm based in the library, and I've got
yes, but somebody said if there's a big poster right when you come through.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll get those. The pull-up.
Yeah, the pull-up ones.
They're quite good.
Yeah.
Fab. Well, I shall see you at the next session that you come to.